Hey everyone, it's Stefanie Garcia, and this is the Art of Becoming series, where we talk all about the journey between where you are right now and where you want to be, and all the stuff that has to happen in between to get you there. If you're ready, let's get started. Hey everyone, how are you all doing? So, if you are watching on Spotify or on YouTube, you might notice that I'm in another location. I'm trying something different. I really wanted to step it up a little bit more when it came to production value and just creativity. So every time I do something new or different, I love being able to share it with all of you, because the whole point of this podcast is about the art of becoming. This location is an exciting new venture for me, and I'm excited to share it with all of you. And then, of course, if you are just listening to the podcast version of this, you're not going to notice a damn thing. So anyway, just for the people who are seeing this on the video version, just wanted to explain a little bit what's going on. Other than that, I don't think you guys, I don't think that matters as much to you, but I wanted to talk about it for a moment. As far as this podcast episode, I want to talk about power, mainly personal power. I've been having a lot of conversations recently with people, and we've been talking about staying in your power, standing in your power, not giving away your power, taking your power back. As many times I've had the conversation with people, I just have been really thinking about it. What does it actually mean to be in your power? What does it mean to stand in your power? What does it mean to take your power back? Like, what does it mean? There's a certain point where I feel like we've talked about it so much, or you just hear it so much. It almost feels like there's nothing really tangible there. And then it really got me thinking about this quote from Marianne Williamson. For those of you who have not heard it, or those of you who have and want to hear it again, I'm just going to go ahead and read it for you. So, our deepest fear is that we're not inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It's our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? As I was thinking about it, I really started to wonder, I'm like, are we really afraid of our power? Is that what we're really afraid of? Or are we unfamiliar with it? I get that being unfamiliar with something can feel uncomfortable. It can even feel a bit vulnerable. I can get where the fear can come from, that uncomfortable feeling and that vulnerability. But I feel like I still wanted to dive into it a little bit deeper. I still don't know that we're necessarily afraid of our power, because I wonder how many of us are actually familiar with being in our power to the point that it feels comfortable and almost like second nature. It almost just makes me wonder, like, can you really be afraid of something that you haven't spent as much time with? And I get it again, like, there's that part of the unknown, right? That makes you wonder, well, yeah, I can be afraid of something that I'm not aware of. So I looked up the definition of being in your power: to fully embrace your own capabilities, strengths, and authentic self, acting with confidence and agency in your life without feeling the need to shrink or apologize for who you are. Essentially, it's about recognizing and utilizing your full potential in every aspect of your life. So by that definition, it sounds like being in your power is about connecting to a truly authentic part of yourself. And that being in your power essentially talks about not feeling the need to shrink that expression, not feeling the need to hold yourself back, saying what you mean to say, trusting in what you bring to the table, being aware of your value. I feel like those are the things about being in your power that's really talking about here. I think the biggest point of this podcast is not that I'm going to come up with something at the end that kind of tells you what this means. I just feel like it's a conversation that I don't feel like enough of us have. I feel that it's a phrase that's just thrown around without really a true understanding of what it means when you're telling somebody to be that. I think it's easy to throw words at somebody, but harder to really be clear about what those words mean. It's more like bringing the energy back to you and living from the inside out versus what many of us are conditioned to do, which is to live from the outside in. And I feel like that is what people are talking about when they say, come back into your power. I think that that's what they're really meaning. But when we look at that definition of fully embracing your own capabilities, strengths, and acting with confidence and agency on your own life, in your own life, again, it's coming from this authentic place where you're making decisions in your life and you're making decisions about what it is you desire, and you're speaking up for those decisions, or you're speaking up for those desires, and your goals are aligned with those desires. And when you're saying no, you're meaning no, not, saying yes, but really meaning no. You're being in that authentic truth of who you are and that essence. When I say those things, again, are we really afraid of that? Or are we just unfamiliar with living our lives from that place? Like, if we're really talking about being afraid of our power, I don't know that we're necessarily as afraid of doing those things. Maybe we're a little bit afraid of other people's reactions. But again, it's just because we're unfamiliar with living our lives from that place in such a way that if someone has a reaction, we're still okay with it because we're so comfortable and familiar with living from our authentic truth. I hope that makes a little bit more sense. I think in order to understand this a little bit further, I think we have to talk about why we are so unfamiliar with living our lives that way. Not necessarily that we're afraid of it, but like, why do we feel like we are not comfortable with it? Why are we not living our lives from that way already? When I really thought about it, these are kind of some of the things that I came up with. One of the reasons that we might be unfamiliar with being in our power is based on social conditioning, right? So it's growing up in a world where you're almost like encouraged to shrink, or you're encouraged to, downplay your ability, right? Don't be too loud. Don't be too quiet. Don't be too boastful. Be more modest. You're kind of encouraged to live your life based, again, on the expectations of others. So when we're afraid to speak up and express our needs, I don't know that we're afraid necessarily of honoring our needs. We're more afraid of what someone else will say as a result of us expressing our needs or our wants or our desires, because again, of that social conditioning. And that starts from a young age. Growing up as little ones, we're constantly being told who we need to be and how we need to act and what we need to do. And when you get into school, there's a little bit more of that to conform, or that encouragement to conform. And then when you don't follow the rules, you deal with the consequences of that. So when you're so used to kind of molding yourself to other people's expectations, you don't spend so much time in your own unique expression from a place that's necessarily encouraged. Now, that's not to say that that's the case for every single person. I know many people that when they were super playful and loud and just expressing themselves fully, they grew up in spaces where that was allowed and encouraged. I think a lot of the times, like, there's no inhibitions within them because they got that space to do that. So there was no conditioning put on them to shrink that part of themselves. So that part of themselves, that part of their unique personality, has been able to just kind of open up freely. So they don't have that. So they're more familiar with that unique expression of themselves because they've not been taught to downplay that. So again, when you're going through these experiences, you're kind of led to believe that it's safer to kind of like suppress that part of yourself and your natural abilities. And that leads to unfamiliarity of what it feels like to fully embrace it. And you see that a lot when you, as adults, for example, just going to a party and everybody's dancing, and maybe not everybody's dancing because there's just this awkwardness, right? How many of us have just kind of been encouraged to just dance freely and dance wildly without inhibitions? Many of us don't do that because we, again, have maybe not been encouraged to do that in a way that felt safe. When we don't have enough time or space to really be in our unique expression in a place that feels safe, kind of the second nature is just to kind of contract and hold back. So number 2 is the fear of the unknown. If you've not expressed yourself before, if you've not stood up for what you wanted, if you've not expressed your desires, if you're a creative person, but you've never really been encouraged to be creative, if you have been a creative person and then you, when you were younger, tried to share your creativity and maybe that was met with an experience that didn't feel comfortable, or maybe it was shameful, or maybe the adults in your life didn't encourage you, they discouraged you, or maybe they had feedback about your creativity that was really negative. When you want to tap into your power, when you want to live your life from a much more authentic place, when you want to come back to being creative because that's what makes your soul come alive, there's a bit of that fear of the unknown because you're kind of, as a child, you may have had one experience, but as an adult, living your life in this quote unquote new way that you're unfamiliar with, that's kind of uncharted territory, right? So you might be feeling like you're just kind of unaware of what could lie behind trying it out. And our brains love to play with us and think up the worst case scenarios. We use our imagination oftentimes in a negative way that doesn't work for us. But also at the same time, if you've had past experiences which were not great, then when you are stepping forward in your life in this new way, your brain is automatically going to go back to the last time you had that experience or a similar experience and fill in the gap with something negative because that was your experience. So the first thing you need to do with that is just honor that you did have that experience, but also open yourself up to the possibility that the new experience may not be anything like that. But still, there's that fear, right? If you've never spoken up for yourself before, and maybe you've had a negative experience in the past as a child when you did, or it's been many years since you have, there is a bit of that fear of what could happen, right? If you're being a little bit more assertive, or if you're asking for your needs to be met, or what somebody might say or do, right? So there is a bit of a vulnerability that comes from being authentic. It doesn't feel safe because it's unfamiliar and it hasn't been practiced over and over again to the point of feeling like second nature because you've been so disconnected from it. The third one that I feel that has kept us from being familiar with being in our power is a lack of role models. Not having enough people in your life or in your world that leaves you to believe that it's possible for you to do it. If you've never seen somebody be creative, if you've really never seen people in your life that look like you or are similar to you, speaking their needs or being creative or dancing like that, or insert whatever it is that makes your soul come alive, that makes you feel like you. If you've never grown up seeing it, it's hard for your mind to make you feel safe to step out and do that too. The more, it's almost like, again, we'll go back to the dance analogy. You're at the party, and if no one's dancing, you don't necessarily feel safe to be the first one dancing. But if 2 or 3 other people come out and start to dance, you might feel a little bit safer to go out and dance. If those people are dancing wildly without inhibition and they're encouraging you to do so as well, you are going to feel more comfortable and more safe to do it. And over time, you'll become familiar with it. But many of us, again, have had the opposite in our lives. Not only have we been discouraged from speaking up and being our unique selves and living our lives in a way that is unique and true to us, many of us have had more experience living a life and been more familiar with living a life that is opposite of that. And when we have a life that is opposite of that, or been living lives that are opposite of that, oftentimes we have people that we are surrounded by that just kind of serve as more evidence to continue to do the thing that we've been doing. So when we're living a life that is not true to who we really are, that doesn't encourage us to be in our power, that doesn't encourage us to live a life that is authentic to us, oftentimes we're also surrounded by people that are doing more of the same. And when they're all at this level, you don't necessarily always feel safe to go to another level. You might feel really uncomfortable and vulnerable with that. Or if you're the first person in your family to do something, there might be feelings and fears of not wanting to leave them behind or being ostracized by them, or feeling like you have to go it alone and that you will be alone forever. All of these thoughts and fears, again, it's our imagination being used in the wrong way, being used in a way that's not serving us. But again, all of that signals to the nervous system a situation that's unsafe. And so when we've been living our lives in this way, that's where it makes sense that we would be unfamiliar with it. As I've been mulling over this for the last few weeks, I just feel that it is much more important to have a conversation about why we have to constantly be reminded to stand in our power. And we'll see people that are in their power and we'll look at that and be like, wow, that's magnificent, right? We might see actors or people in positions of leadership where you're like, wow, they are really being themselves. They're really, truly authentic. And you can see examples of it from far away. But when you come to your own personal life, you may not be surrounded by people that are like that. In your day-to-day life, it's great to see them from far away, but your mind might be thinking, yeah, it's great for them, but not for me. Many of us, I think, have just spent more and more time in that place than we have in the others. And it just seems like it's so far away at points. So I wanted to go back to the Marianne Williamson quote. I want to actually go back to the second half of that quote. With all that I've just said, let's go back to that. We ask, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make magnificent the glory of God that lives within us. It is not just in some of us, it is in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. So the reason I wanted to go back to that second part of the quote is because I feel like that is probably the better expression about what it is to be living in your power. There is just something unique in all of us, a unique expression. And I feel like nothing is wasted and none of us are here to just take up space. There is something unique that we have to offer the world. And it requires us to take time to explore it and to, again, become familiar with it. And as children, we come into the world, I feel, already being it, already expressing it. And if we didn't have other people's influences, if we didn't have the outside world telling us to live opposite, we would be living in a way, our lives would be maybe a lot different. It's almost like as children, we come in this form and then we're constantly being pressed and expected to fit into a certain mold of who the world thinks we should be before we even have a choice or decision on that, right? Before we even have the opportunity to make that decision for ourselves, right? Before we even have a chance to decide who we want to be, there's this outside influence telling us who we should be and who we should be for who. Who decided that that's who you should be? Who decided what that form, that mold is? Who decided the form of perfection who decided the shoulds? And I feel like it's healthy to ask that question now as adults. As children, we didn't have a whole lot of control over that. As children, we didn't have the power to ask that question. As children, we probably never even thought about it, unless you were like me when I was a teenager and I really did wonder, who were they? I really wondered who the shoulds were. But I think as adults, we now have that power to ask that question. And I think it's healthy to ask that question. And if it doesn't match up with what we feel is true in our heart and our soul, then it's something that we should consider changing. So when I talk about this second part of this quote, I think it really speaks to living a life from that unique expression of who you're created to be. And take religion out of it. Just, it's that essence of like, why are you breathing? What is this point of you being here? And oftentimes you can feel it in your soul. But many of us are just so disconnected. Oftentimes we don't even feel our souls. To finish off this episode, I wanted to leave you with another quote. It's from Queen Elizabeth II. She said, "We are all visitors to this time, this place. We are just passing through. Our purpose here is to observe, to learn, to grow, to love, and then we return home. I saw that the other day and I felt like, oh yeah, that connects a little bit more to what it is that I've been thinking about. I do want to add one more thing to that quote, and that is to contribute. I feel like when she said that we are here, our purpose is to observe, to learn, to grow, to love, I feel like our purpose is also to contribute. And here's the reason why I feel that way. There is a conversation, a dialogue between the universe and this world that has been going on for long before we were born. And it will continue long after we've gone. And I feel that her quote sums it up beautifully, why we're here and what our purpose is. When we are here, our job is to be a part of the ongoing conversation. I feel like we are meant to, when we come here, we're meant to listen, we're meant to observe, we're meant to learn and explore, we're meant to experience. But then I believe we also are meant to take all that we've gained and contribute to that conversation in a way that embodies the essence of who we are. It's a way that we're giving from ourselves, adding to the tapestry of the ongoing conversation, hopefully in a way that's positive. And I feel like we can only truly contribute in a constructive way that truly influences it when we are coming from a place that is truly authentic to ourselves. So I feel like being in our power is being familiar and practiced in connecting to that part of ourselves, so much so that it's second nature, so that the essence of it colors all that we do in a way that when we're gone, others can feel like that we were here. Thanks so much for listening. If you'd like, share this episode with a friend. That way we can get it into the ears of people who need it the most. You can also visit my website at theartofbecoming.me. While there, you can go ahead and download my guide, Own That Shit, 3 ways to own who you are, own what you do, and own it out into the world. Thank you again so much for listening, and I'll speak to you soon.